Long before anyone imagined the world could collapse around them, Frau Adler's classroom was a sanctuary of small miracles. Her students, 12 children with untied shoelaces, uneven handwriting, and pockets full of crumbs, believed she could fix anything. A broken pencil, a forgotten assignment, a hurt feeling. She had a way of looking at each child as if they were the most important person in the room. In those moments, they believed her. The village schoolhouse smelled of chalk and warm bread from the bakery next door. Every morning, sunlight spilled across the desks, catching dust in slow-floating shapes. It was a place where childhood still existed, thin, delicate, easily broken, but alive. The world outside was changing fast, but inside her classroom, Frau Adler tried to hold time still. She saw the danger long before anyone else dared speak it aloud. Posters appeared on walls. Soldiers marched through the square. New rules arrived every week, each one colder than the last. Some children stopped coming to class. Their seats remained empty for days until adults whispered explanations that were meant to comfort but never did. Frau Adler kept teaching anyway. She understood that routines were a shield, thin, but better than nothing. Then came the morning. Everything changed. The children were tracing maps when the sound of boots thundered toward the schoolhouse. The floorboards seemed to vibrate under their feet. Several children froze. Others began to cry. Frau Adler did not flinch. She stood so calmly that, for a moment, the children believed they were safe simply because she was standing. 3 SS officers burst through the doorway. The tallest one scanned the room with an expression that suggested he enjoyed finding reasons to doubt people. "We are conducting an inspection," he announced. "We have reports that this school has been harboring those who should have been removed." Removed. The word struck the air like ice water. The children shrank in their seats. 2 of them, Jacob and Lee, looked down so quickly it was almost suspicious. Their identities had become fragile things, hidden under sleeves and silence. The officers stepped between the desks. One leaned in close to Jacob, staring at him as if trying to see through his skin. "What is your name?" he demanded. Jacob swallowed so hard it made a sound. Before he could answer, Frau Adler stepped forward, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. "He is mute," she said. "A fever took his voice 2 winters ago. The doctor will confirm it." It was a lie. A dangerous, deliberate lie. Jacob's wide eyes flicked upward, fear trembling through his small body. Lee's hands shook under a desk. The officers turned to the teacher. "Mute," the tallest repeated. "And the girl?" "She is my cousin's child," Frau Adler replied, her tone smooth. "And her family fled the city after bombings. She has papers. I submitted them to the district office last week." Another lie. Lee had no papers. Her family had been taken months earlier. She and Jacob had been sleeping in Frau Adler's attic, wrapped in blankets that smelled of lavender and dust. The room seemed to hold its breath. The officers studied her face, searching for cracks. She did not blink. Years of teaching had trained her to stand still, even when everything inside her trembled. Children learned by watching. So did monsters. "Your papers!" one officer demanded. "Filed at the Rathos," she replied calmly. "You may verify them there." The risk was enormous, but the claim was clever. Bureaucratic records often went missing or were processed slowly. If the officers checked and found nothing, it could be blamed on incompetence, not deceit. The tallest officer stepped closer, so close she could smell tobacco on his coat. "Why are you so calm, Frau Adler?" "Because I have nothing to hide," she said, meeting his eyes. "And 12 frightened children who need me not to panic." Silence stretched. The officers exchanged glances. One muttered something under his breath, irritated. Bureaucratic errands annoyed them. They preferred quick, clean conclusions. Anything requiring paperwork bored them. Finally, the leader grunted. "We will verify the records. If there are discrepancies, we will return." They left as abruptly as they had entered. The room exhaled as one. Several children burst into tears. Jacob clutched the edge of his desk, as if afraid he might fall through the floor. Only then did Frau Adler allow her hands to tremble. She placed them flat on her desk to steady them, breathing carefully, silently. "Children?" she said softly. "Take out your spelling books?" The lesson continued, not because it mattered, but because they needed to believe tomorrow might still come. That afternoon, when the children had gone home and the hallway echoes faded into silence, Frau Adler locked the classroom door and finally let the weight of what she'd done settle into her bones. Her lies quick, sharp, necessary were now threads holding 12 lives together. If any one of them snapped, the whole fragile web would collapse. She walked between the desks, touching each wooden surface as if reassuring herself that the children still existed, still breathed, still had another day. But beneath the rhythm of her steps lurked a truth she could no longer ignore. The officers would be back. She climbed the narrow staircase to her attic. The boards creaked under her weight, sounding louder than usual, as if the house itself was nervous. Jacob and Lee were sitting cross-legged on an old blanket, their small shoulders hunched with fear. They looked up immediately when she entered. Did they know? Lee whispered, her voice thin as paper. "No, Frau," Adler said firmly, kneeling beside them. "But they will return. We have little time." The children clung to each other. They had already lost everything once. Losing safety again would break them. She lit a candle and unfolded a map she had drawn the night before. It showed the old mill road, the forest path, the farmhouse rumored to shelter fugitives. She had intended to wait, to gather supplies and safer routes, but the morning's raid changed everything. They needed a way out now. "You will leave tonight," Sid told Tim. Jacob's eyes widened. Lee shook her head violently. "We can't leave you," she cried. "They'll know. They'll hurt you." Frau Adler brushed a strand of hair from Lee's forehead. "My place is here. Yours is anywhere but here." Nightfall brought a cold wind that rattled shutters and filled empty streets with eerie whistles. She packed a small satchel, bread, water, a wool scarf, and the silver whistle she used in class, something familiar, something to remind them of gentler hours. When she handed it to Jacob, he tried to refuse, but she closed his hand around it. "If you ever feel lost," she said, "blow it once. Someone kind will hear." She wished she believed her own promise. As darkness deepened, she led them through the back garden, past the lilac bush that had bloomed every spring since her husband planted it. It was strange how ordinary things felt more vivid on nights when everything might end. The children stayed close behind her, their breaths visible in the cold air, their steps nearly silent. She reached the stone wall at the edge of her property and helped them climb. Beyond it stretched the narrow path leading toward the forest line between danger and the small, uncertain hope still left. Just before they left, Lee turned back. "Will we see you again?" The question hit her like a blow. "If the world allows it," she answered softly. "But if it does not, remember that you are loved fiercely." Lee stumbled into her arms, tears hot on her cheek. Jacob hugged her waist with desperate strength. And then, with one last look, they ran into the dark. She stood alone as their small shapes disappeared among the trees. A sound rose in her throat, a kind of silent sob she refused to release. She could not fall apart, not yet, because she knew what came next. The officers would return. Not tomorrow, not next week. They would return tonight. She re-entered her house with a strange calm. She straightened the tablecloth, stacked her papers neatly, and rehearsed her lie again and again. She would need to sound tired, confused, perhaps even indignant. Anything but afraid. For Jacob and Lee, she would become whatever the moment, Dima Data shield, a distraction, a liar, a martyr if necessary. The first knock came shortly after midnight. Loud, impatient. She inhaled slowly, wiped her palms on her skirt, and opened the door. 3 officers filled the doorway. The same men, the same cold eyes. "We checked the Rathus," the leader said. "There is no record matching your statement." Her heartbeat stuttered, but her expression did not shift. "Then the clerk has misplaced it again," she replied. "He drinks, you know." The man stepped closer, his breath warm and sour. "Where are the 2 children?" Her answer needed to be perfect, sharp enough to seem offended, soft enough to sound truthful. "What children?" she said. The room seemed to freeze around them. Frau Adler spent the next hours living in two timelines at once. The lesson unfolding in front of her, and the danger tightening quietly around the village like a rope being pulled from both ends. She corrected arithmetic sheets, praised good handwriting, and mediated small arguments all while replaying the officer's questions in her mind. Somewhere, a detail had caught their attention. Somewhere, the lie had sounded too clean. By late afternoon, the winter sun had dipped low enough to turn the classroom windows into muted mirrors. She saw her own reflection faintly over the small faces bent toward their notebooks, her posture composed, her expression controlled. Only she knew how quickly her heart was beating beneath her blouse. When the bell finally rang, she dismissed the children gently, watching each one hurry into the cold with scarves wrapped tight. She didn't let herself exhale until the last one disappeared from sight. On her walk home, village chatter felt thinner, stranger. People stood close when they spoke, eyes shifting toward the end of the street where patrols often appeared. A dog barked once, and then went silent, as if reminded of the consequences of noise. She forced herself into a natural stride. Anything too hurried might look suspicious. Anything too casual might look staged. Inside her house, she lit a lamp and closed the curtains before removing her coat. Her hands trembled just slightly. She went to the attic and checked the space where Jacob and Lee had stayed. Two small impressions in the blanket still marked their shapes. Her breath caught. It had only been days since they left, but the attic already felt like a memory fading too quickly. She knelt beside the blanket, pressing her palm to the wooden floor. "Be far from here by now," she whispered. "Please." She tried to focus on practicalities. Tomorrow would require clarity. She reheated broth, though she tasted none of it. She reviewed lesson plans she might never teach. She drafted explanations she might need if questioned again. But beneath all these tasks ran a single, persistent realization. If a new unit was coming, they would not let the matter rest until they were satisfied. And those units, the ones whispered about in kitchens and alleyways, had a reputation for not believing anyone, not trusting paperwork, not needing proof. Just past dusk, someone knocked at her door. She froze, fingers tightening around her cup. The knock was soft, hesitant, not official. She opened the door a crack and saw Herr Brecht, the postman, his breath puffing in the cold. "I shouldn't be here," he said. "But people are talking. They say the officers questioned the baker this afternoon about missing children." She felt her pulse throb in her throat. "Did he say anything?" "He said nothing, but they don't need answers to become suspicious." He lowered his voice. "They're gathering names." "And yours?" came up. She leaned against the doorway, steadying herself. "Thank you for telling me." He nodded once before hurrying away. She closed the door carefully, resisting the urge to bolt it. Panic would lead to poor decisions. Poor decisions would lead to children disappearing from her classroom, not the ones she had hidden, but the ones who still sat before her every morning, trusting her to protect them from everything she could. She returned to her desk and pulled out the attendance sheet. Each name felt like a candle flame she'd been shielding with her hands. If she was removed, if she was questioned forcefully, those flames would flicker dangerously. She sat for a long time, listening to the quiet settle through the house. Then she made a decision. She would prepare her students for the possibility that she might not be there. Not with fear, but with instruction lessons that could outlive her. That night, she wrote 12 letters, each different, each speaking directly to a child's strengths. Encouragement disguised as advice. Warnings disguised as hope. She sealed them carefully and stored them in her desk drawer behind a row of dull pencils. When she finally went to bed, she did not sleep deeply. Every sound, the groan of the floorboards, the tap of tree branches, the distant rumble of a cart pulled her back to alertness. She kept rehearsing her answers for the next day, imagining the questions, anticipating the traps hidden between syllables. Just before dawn, she rose and dressed in her neatest clothes. Her hands lifted the fabric automatically, the way a soldier might lift armor. She pinned her hair, straightened her collar, and paused for a moment before the mirror. Fear flickered in her reflection, but beneath it lived something sturdier. Resolve, whatever tomorrow demanded of her composure. Intelligence. Sacrifice. She would meet it. Not because she believed she would succeed, but because the children deserved someone who would try. Frau Adler walked to the school the next morning beneath a sky the color of iron flat. Heavy, soundless. It felt like the world was holding its breath. The summons paper remained folded tightly in her pocket, its edges already softened by her fingertips from hours of unconscious handling. Each step toward the village hall felt both inevitable and unreal, as though she were entering a story whose ending she had no control over. Yet, she kept walking. She had always kept walking. Inside the classroom, the children greeted her quietly. They sensed the shift in the air without understanding its shape. She moved among them with her usual grace, but her smile was thinner, her gaze drifting too often to the window. She tried to anchor herself in the rhythm of lessons, but her mind flickered constantly to the hall, to the questions waiting for her there. By noon, she dismissed the class early, telling them the village needed the room for an inspection. Another lié, another shield. As the last child left, Tomas lingered at the door, eyes wide with worry. "Will you be here tomorrow?" he asked. The question landed like a blade. "I will do everything I can," she said softly. It was the closest she could come to truth. He nodded, though not reassured, and ran to catch the others. When the school fell silent, she sat at her desk for a moment, steadying her breath. She touched the drawer where the letters rested, a dozen tiny lifelines, just in case. Tense Rose locked the classroom and walked toward the hall. The village seemed smaller today, as if uncertainty had shrunk the streets. People watched her pass from behind curtains, their expressions tight with fear or curiosity. A few offered faint nods, silent acknowledgments of the risks she had taken, though none dared speak them aloud. She didn't blame them. Survival demanded silence. The hall door loomed ahead, dark and tall. Two officers stood on either side, unfamiliar faces with rigid posture and eyes that gave nothing away. She approached calmly, handing over the summons. One of them scanned it before pushing the door open. "Inside," he ordered. The room she entered was stark bare walls, a single table, 3 chairs. A man sat waiting, his uniform immaculate, his demeanor unnervingly polite. He gestured for her to sit. "Frau Adler," he began. "Thank you for coming so promptly." She folded her hands in her lap, concealing their slight tremor. "I received a summons," she replied. "I assumed it was not optional." He smiled with no warmth at all. "No, not optional. Merely expected." He opened a thin folder too. Thin, she hoped 10, scanned its contents. "There are rumors," he said lightly, "that 2 children matching certain descriptions passed through this village recently. As you are the schoolteacher, we thought you might have seen or heard something." She held his gaze evenly. "Children pass through many places," she answered. "I keep track only of those assigned to my classroom." "Of course," he said, leaning forward slightly. "Yet your name was mentioned more than once." He paused, allowing the implication to settle. "We simply require clarity." She felt the room constrict, the air thickening like fog. Her heartbeat remained steady, though she clung to the mental rehearsal she had practiced all night. "I have nothing to clarify," she said. "If someone spoke my name, they were mistaken." The man studied her carefully. It was not the stare of someone searching for truth, but of someone measuring the strength of an opponent. "You are known as a woman of compassion," he said slowly. "Compassion can make people foolish, even disloyal." "Compassion," she replied, "is not a crime." A long silence followed. Then he closed the folder. "We will continue our inquiries," he said. "For now, you may go." His expression did not change, but she sensed what he wasn't saying. They did not believe her. Not entirely, and disbelief was dangerous. She stood, bowed her head slightly, and walked out of the hall with her steps controlled. Her breath even. Only when she reached the street did she allow her knees to weaken for one trembling second. Just one. Then she straightened again. The officers had not arrested her, but the suspicion lingered. It clung to her like ash. She had bought time, but time was no longer abundant. As she crossed the square, the church bell tolled once, echoing through the empty air. A warning, a reminder, a countdown. She would have to decide soon whether to stay and risk everything, or to vanish before the net tightened beyond escape. That, even in the village, felt different, stripped of its usual sounds, emptied of its fragile routines. Frau Adler walked home with the faint sense that every window concealed a watcher. Every corner held a question she could not afford to answer. The man at the hall had let her go. Yes, but only because he believed time would expose whatever she was hiding. And men like him were patient. They waited for fear to loosen tongues, for exhaustion to reveal truths that courage had held in place. Inside her house, the shadows felt heavier than usual. She lit a lamp and sat at her small kitchen table, replaying every word she had spoken, every breath she had taken during the interrogation. Had her pause been too long? Had her tone betrayed her? Had the officer seen the flicker of panic she tried so hard to bury? She pressed her palms against her eyes, willing herself not to unravel. Not now. Not with 12 students depending on her strength and 2 children, running through the world with only her instructions as protection. She rose abruptly and opened the window, letting in the cold. The shock of winter air steadied her. She needed clarity, not fear. She needed strategy, not regret. And she needed to face the truth she had avoided since the summons arrived. Staying might no longer be possible. If the officers questioned her again, if they searched her home, her classroom, her belongings, they would find something, a clue, a letter, a single overlooked detail, and then everything she had done, every risk she had taken, would collapse like a bridge made of paper. But leaving meant abandoning the children she still taught every morning, the ones whose futures depended on her ability to navigate danger with a steady hand. The thought alone made her chest tighten. She walked through the quiet rooms, touching the familiar objects she might never see again: the bookshelf her husband built, the shawl her mother embroidered, the wooden bird carved by a former student. Each one carried a memory, and each memory felt heavier now, as if anchoring her to a life she no longer had permission to inhabit. She stopped at her desk and pulled out the drawer containing the 12 letters. For a long moment, she simply stared at them. Each envelope held words she had never spoken, aloud: praise, guidance, hope disguised as instruction. She imagined the children finding the letters one day, long after she was gone, reading them with trembling hands and understanding at last how much she had tried to protect them. The thought brought both comfort and grief. As night settled over the village, a soft tapping sounded at her door. Taps, a pause, then one more. Not a soldier's knock, not a neighbor's either. She hesitated, then opened the door a crack. It was Herr Bracht again, eyes wide with urgency. "They searched the mill road," he whispered, "and the forest path. They're looking for signs of children." Her breath caught. Jacob and Lee were days ahead by now. At least she hoped so, but the search meant the officers believed the children had passed through this village specifically. "How much time do I have?" she asked. "Not much. They're planning house inspections tomorrow. All teachers and clergy first." Her pulse quickened. Teachers and clergy were always the first to be questioned. They were the ones most likely to hide the vulnerable. "Thank you," she whispered. "Truly." He nodded and slipped back into the dark. She closed the door silently and leaned against it, the reality settling like a weight across her shoulders. Tomorrow, they would come tomorrow. She moved quickly now, gathering only what she needed: warm clothing, a small amount of food, identification papers, the map she had given copies of to Jacob and Lee. She hesitated before taking her husband's photograph, then left it on the shelf. Some memories were too fragile to carry into danger. Before leaving, she returned one last time to the classroom. The moonlight spilled through the windows, illuminating the empty desks. She walked between them slowly, running her fingers along the wood, remembering the laughter that once filled the room, the innocence she had tried so desperately to shield. She placed the bundle of letters on her desk, arranging them neatly as if preparing a final lesson. At the chalkboard, she picked up a piece of chalk and wrote a single-sentence not for the children, not for the officers, but for whoever would stand in this room after her. "Be braver than the world expects." She set the chalk down, closed the door gently behind her, and stepped into the cold night. The village lay silent, unaware that its teacher was disappearing not out of fear, but out of necessity. Her last thought before she slipped into the dark road was of the children running through the forest days before, clutching the silver whistle she had given them. She hoped they remembered her words. She hoped someone kind had heard them, if they ever needed to use it. And she hoped fiercely, desperately, that the world would allow her students to grow old enough to understand why she had lied, why she had stayed, and why she had finally chosen to run.